When it comes to hot-button topics, few bring up as strong emotions as gun control and the safety of kids in our schools. Land Commissioner Patterson has taken stances on each issue that could upset different parts of the political spectrum. We sat down earlier this week for an in-depth discussion. So obviously guns has been a hot topic this session, and you have expressed support for maybe armed personnel in schools. There are some districts that are actually jumping on board now, but what if parents don't want their child to go to a school where there are guns?
What if parents don't want their child to go to the mall where there are police officers? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, the objective is safety. We should do whatever enhances safety, no matter who we offend. And if we have a hoplophobic parent, somebody who has an inordinate fear of firearms, that's just too bad. I'm a proponent of having a competent, capable, trained person at every public school with a firearm. That could be a principal, it could be a vice principal, it could be a coach, could be a teacher, could be a cop, could be a security guard, because whenever you have a shooter in a circumstance where that shooter is in complete control because it's a gun-free zone, that shooter remains in complete control until someone can return fire. When the first person that returns fire, the dynamic has changed. That shooter, that mentally deranged person no longer is focusing solely on victims. He's focusing on a threat to him.
Well, we talk about vouchers for academics, but what if parents, want vouchers to be able to move their kids to a school that might not have weapons?
You can homeschool. I mean, if you want to, no, I don't, no. I think that is just bizarre that somebody would be wrapped around the axle about the fact that there might be an armed guard at a school. HISD has a police force of 200. They're cops, they're peace officers, they're at schools. AISD, I don't know the number. All school districts have armed folks, but they're generally at middle schools and high schools. They call them resource officers. So any parent out there that's lamenting that there might be a competent armed person at a school is, go ahead and lament. I don't care. It's about safety, not about your fear of firearms.
What about the bill that Jason Villalba from up in Dallas has filed to get school marshals possibly?
Yeah, I think that's a good description for it, school marshals, because the other side, the people who don't like gun side, we don't need every teacher having a gun. Well, nobody's talking about that. Just relax. We're not talking about every classroom with a gun. We're talking about someone who can respond, someone who has access to a firearm, someone who's competent, trained, and inclined and designated to respond should there be a shooter in a school. It's just plain common sense.
You are running for lieutenant governor in 2014 against Todd Staples, David Dewhurst, maybe Susan Combs. Seems like guns has been a big part of your platform so far. We've got the Facebook ads that are pretty clever, I guess, jump out at you, when you're talking about the lieutenant governor race. Are you really finding that you're making any traction with this whole idea?
Well, people describe it as guns. Well, it's really not guns. It's liberty. The Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Tenth. It's about liberty. And, of course, I'm a believer that the Second Amendment is the defender of the rest. At some point in the future, not in my lifetime, but maybe in the lifetime of my grandchildren or their children, the Second Amendment may be needed for what it's designed to do, and that is to defend citizens or allow citizens to defend themselves against an oppressive government. But it's all about liberty. And in Texas, being a pro-Second Amendment person is not a bad thing in a Republican primary, and we're having great success with that. That's kind of the hook that everybody understands. Then you get folks in your campaign, you get folks in your camp, because of your, fact that you were the author of the concealed handgun law. I wrote that law. Then you can talk about other issues related to, education or infrastructure or whatever it may be. But that's the hook, yeah.
Obviously, the whole idea of the Second Amendment and guns is very appealing to your conservative voters out there. But with immigration, it seems like you have maybe a different stance than what we have been seeing traditionally from the Republican Party.
And it's a stance that now has taken hold. I mean, for the last 6 years, I've been talking about the Republican Party needs to get away from bumper sticker immigration policies. Bumper sticker like build a fence. Hey, that makes, secure the borders. Well, that's not an immigration policy. That's a slogan. We've got to do more. And so this last June at the Republican convention, 8,000 delegates in the audience, I was the only elected official, and have been the only elected official for almost 6 years, that stood up to that audience and said, we need a guest worker program. and we need to start doing something that works. And I stepped up to the mic to advocate for that and fully expected for that to be kind of a death knell of my political future. And it turned out that the delegates to the Republican convention adopted that platform plank by a 3-to-1 margin. All they needed was someone to lead, someone to step up, and someone to say what they were all basically kind of under the under the radar, saying, maybe what we're doing is not the only way to do this. So I did it, and it's now part of our platform.
My discussion with Jerry Patterson continues on KXAN.com. There you'll hear him talk about the possibly misused fund aimed at paying for education. It's all in the legislative section of KXAN.com. Still ahead, nearly $1 billion could go back into schools. Our roundtable tackles that, plus Texas feud with California as In Session In Depth continues.